Welcome, everyone, to the Within the Margin podcast, where we speak with authors and more about their books, their inspirations, and all the wonderful details in life. Today, we are speaking with an awesome author. His name is Steven Uwajeh, and he had his book called How Goldfish Find Their Way. And thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Wonderful. So we always like to always get started. What makes Steven Steven?
What makes Steven Steven? That's a great question. So I think we're really made up of our experiences, starting from our immediate family to our society and our community. So what makes Steven Steven? I'm the last of four kids, and I'm a typical last born, very well treated by all my siblings. The accent is from Nigeria, so a lot of my formative years were in Nigeria. But I always came from a really diverse point of view because my parents schooled in the US and then went back to Nigeria. So that was something that already impacted me. And then my schooling was in different places. I schooled partly in Nigeria, schooled in Spain, and schooled in the US. And then I also ended up working for a group of international organizations, which really gave me the opportunity of seeing the world and different people and different cultures. And I think all of that has made Steven Steven.
I'm just incredibly jealous about the idea of like all the places you've gone to go and all the schooling. How does that culture, all the being introduced to all those cultures, help you in your life?
It helps me in many tremendous ways. One, and very importantly, it is just the excitement about the richness of the world. It's the exposure to different perspectives. It's the constant learning. And in fact, the fact that it's also very humbling because you just realize that the way I see something, someone might just come in and throw in a doozy on it. And what they would say would make absolute sense. And so that's how it's shaped me. And so it means that I'm constantly open. And every time I hear something, see something, I just know that this is the best solution at this time. This is how I think about the world at this time. And I'm open to it evolving. And that's it. But most importantly, in a very strange way, is the more different I see that we are, the more similar I see that we still are. Everyone still wants to be happy, wants to feel loved, wants to be taken care of, wants to be acknowledged, wants to be seen. And so it's amazing that even though we show it up in different ways, it's still the same fundamental things that we're after.
That's so great because that realization how out of all you've gotten to see, you've been able to distill it down to a couple things that I don't think that anyone could disagree with anything you just said. Like, yes, of course, if you want to be loved, you want to be understood, and I think it's crazy how you were able to put that all together while also understanding in your normal life that things evolve and what could I possibly learn tomorrow and not be afraid of that. That's a good thing.
Indeed.
That's wonderful. So we're here to also talk about your book, which is How Goldfish Find Their Way. And so tell us about that moment you decided this book has to be written.
Actually, yeah, it's a phased story. So the first initiative came from my niece. She was 6 at the time. And she asked me what I did for work. And at that moment, I was doing a lot of work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And so I thought to myself, I want to explain to a child in a way that makes sense to a child, without sugarcoating it, without just saying everyone just needs to love each other like some other cartoon show. And I wanted her to understand the concept versus just being given a story, so that every time she saw it in whatever shape or fashion, she would understand it. Basically, just like how my own experiences have groomed me, but I ended up doing nothing about it, like many of us. And then it took another, I believe, 2 years. And then my brother my first niece was from my older sister. Like I said, I'm the last of four kids. And then my brother had his first daughter, and it hit me that, the next generation is truly, truly here, and you've written nothing. And another backstory to it. And so it made me write on that day, I had written sketches of everything, but on that Sunday when my niece was born, I literally wrote the whole thing. Of course, I refined it over time, but
Of
I
course.
stayed on my desk from morning till evening and I did not get up until I had written everything. So it was one of those moments. But another thing that really propelled me was because my grandfather, who fought in World War II with the British Army, he learned to read and write as an adult, and he wrote his own autobiography with his broken English and everything. But he gave us something. And meanwhile, all his kids who were very educated, like my great grandfather, I meant, like my grandfather, who was even a psychiatric nurse and schooled in England, wrote nothing. And I didn't get to meet my grandfather. And I'm like, you know what? Sometimes those of us that have so much end up doing so little. And those people who have little appreciate it and do more. And I didn't want to end up being like my grandparents, who were all educated, schooled in England, and wrote nothing. And so I said, you know what, that could just be my story. So I said, write. If you want to write, write. And that's what happened. So inspiration from my niece, being pushed and propelled ahead by another niece, and looking at my great grandfather as inspiration.
That's incredible because writing is such a, as technology soars into the future and who knows where all of this is going to go. But writing is that one thing. It stays in our culture and it stays within humanity in itself. That's
Mm-hmm.
what is going to persist. That's what we can find. We can find writings from thousands and thousands of years. Who knows what could happen where they're going to be like, what are these computer things? You can't read them. Like it's but writing and putting things in the book form is such a way to capture the imagination. And for someone like the next, from like your niece, and the ability to distill all your knowledge that you've out of all the experiences you've had, and be able to put it in a way that this is an important thing for the next generation to learn. This is the
Mm-hmm.
beginning or one of my many investments into the next generation, because those those ingredients that you found in the world, if that is able to be the primary values of the next generation, the possibilities are endless.
Indeed.
Like
That
I
is
just
correct.
so how did you pick the route that you took? So it's a very, there's a lot of animals. There's you have the goldfish. It's a great way that you did it. How did you pick that particular path?
So a driver for it was I knew I it needed to be big prints. I knew it needed to be colorful, and folks just think about like, well, kids like colors and everything. But another part of my life also impacted that. So growing up, folks didn't realize I needed glasses. I learned a lot by hearing, and so the only things I really wanted to do as a child was look at pictures and see big images. And so I was like, you know what, my book surely needs to have pictures and big and big letters everywhere. So that was a given because I was going to write for that child. The other thing that I was thinking about doing was I also wanted to make sure that the lesson was embedded in a story. And I was thinking about a few famous stories. So, for instance, I thought about the story of the people of Israel getting out of Egypt. And it's a story that a lot of people know, even in different cultures, regardless of their religious inclination. And so I thought that was a good foundational story to throw in and draw in a couple of lessons in that space. And then I chose the tortoise because in a lot of African culture, it's considered a very wise animal. And of course, it's lived very long. It's not very fast. And yet somehow manages not to get killed. So
Exactly.
we tend to think the tortoise is extremely wise and they live for a
How
very
do
long
they do
time.
that, by the way?
How do they do that? Slow and steady. They're just inoffensive and they're amphibious on land, in the water, just minding their own good business. And then, of course, I think a lot of the world has fascination with the eagle, and so that was as the queen of the sky or the king of the sky, whatever gender you choose to give it. And even though it's not, it doesn't go the highest into the sky, which I found very surprising. But it's a strong bird, has everything put together. And even in, especially in Eastern Nigerian culture, we also respect the eagle. You don't see eagles too often, so it's a wonderful sight when you just see them fly past. And so I thought I put those elements. And then the third thing I chose was the goldfish on purpose because they are really bright and shiny. you know so
Exactly.
and I thought about them representing youthfulness, and drive and energy. So I just thought it made a lot of sense to put the goldfish, the eagle, and the tortoise. Those were the three major characters, and everyone else just found their way in between.
Oh, yeah. Well, with the tortoise and the eagle, those are two. I don't think you have very many similarities between those two.
Not at
And,
all.
and it's yet, that connection right there, their ability to play off of each other, very much shows kind of. I feel like what you're trying to show in the story about how we all have something to give. We all have some. We've been blessed with various traits to be able to blend together and make something better of this world.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. That's spot on. That's what I was driving at, which is it wasn't one thing, it wasn't about saying, oh, this person is great, you're not. It's just, it's not, it wasn't even a story about, oh, make space for other people. It was just for you to even have a better appreciation of the world, to live life to its fullest. You want to involve other people. That's really what it was for. So in a sense, it was, I'm hoping people go past this selfishness, but it's a basic human instinct. So I was appealing to that fundamental instinct for self-preservation, for everything you want. And I was trying to just note that being diverse and open like that actually gives you more of the things that you want. And oh, by the way, the names of the eagle and the tortoise are my parents. So Kanayo is my dad's name.
Okay, very
And
cool.
Ogbe is the short version of my mom's name. The longer version is Ogbeyano. But I was thinking of an international audience, and I was like, let's not make them bite their tongues. So let's use the short version of it. And indeed, my parents are extremely different. They run a real estate practice. My dad likes his numbers, his measurements, the calculations. And my mother is the one who's thinking about the colors. What kind of person wants to live, because it's a residential home. So they think so differently, but in their 44-year marriage so far, it's exactly what made them work so well in terms of playing off of each other from being so different in the way they think, and bringing it together to produce magic for their business, and hopefully with us, their kids and their grandkids.
Well, definitely. Well, that's crazy. Even you kind of you nailed it when even in a marriage. Like I know me and my wife, entirely two different people. Like we are, but it's the blending together and being able to now. Does it lead to every once in a while to some tension? Of course, that's the way it works.
Of
But
course.
that blending, but is I think it's the pressure makes diamonds, and
Hmm.
it's amazing once you're to have that ability because I feel like it is a once you you kind of fight against it sometimes with differences and wanting to be like, oh, but that doesn't seem like it fits. But then also once you let that guard down, then the possibilities are endless.
One of my personal philosophies is about honesty. And people don't like to admit to the fact that there is more in court peace when you're just a monolith. And people in their drive, genuine drive to make sure we have a more inclusive world, try to pretend that's not true. But I firmly believe that if you tell people, yes, I do know that if you're all the same, you have more peace. But the thing about it is that you don't live life to your fullest. You miss out on so much. And because you all see the same way, you all can see the dangers, or you all can see the
Yeah.
opportunities. And I think a lot of people have refused to acknowledge those things about, oh, an all boys club, they should introduce women to it and it makes it automatically better. And because people don't want to sound with one of the isms, they would say, oh, yeah, that's true. But in their heart of hearts, they know, nah, I really just liked it when it was me and my bros.
Yeah.
But if you say, I acknowledge that,
Hmm.
but actually you don't realize what you're missing. And that's really how I wanted my niece to learn the story. It wasn't, oh, God loves all the children of the world, therefore be
Yeah.
friends with all the children of the world. It was no, it's just so that you even just have a richer life. Is why you want to extend. It will be slightly uncomfortable because they're different from you, but this is what helps you grow and enjoy the world a lot more.
From your all your experience and watching all of these cultures and watching, and promotion of watching everybody blend in, when you find people who are either struggle with that concept or they, something's holding them back, what would be your advice to say, just dive right in there and just embrace the differences? What would you say your advice would be?
My advice would be take it easy on yourself. It is a natural instinct, a natural, should I say, predilection to go with what is familiar. It has kept us safe. It has kept us, in quote, strong. However, when you acknowledge that, don't fight against that grain. But when you acknowledge that, just like anything worth doing, you want a better education, you want to be physically fit, it requires exercise. Then, knowing where you are and knowing where you want to be, just start making the effort. It might not always pan out. It might feel uncomfortable, and then just remember that at the end of the day, when you make that opening, when you finally succeed at getting there, allows you to live a much richer, fuller life, a life that you yourself want, a much happier life, a more open life, a more secure life than you even thought when you were with that monolithic group. And that's something that I would advise anyone to do is take it easy on yourself. It is natural. It's our instinct, the same way it's our instinct to just want to eat till we drop. It's our instinct to not want to just stay on our beds and not exercise. It's our instinct to just stay with the meals that we know and like and trust and people we like and trust. It's the same thing. Just realizing that the better path is the path that requires a little more stress. There's nothing worth doing outside of the life that we have that does not require some work.
Yeah. Well, I feel like if it made me think about as you were saying that, how when you're only dealing with yourself, you have this vision of how life's going to go, and it's
Hmm.
a little more predictable. And then, or you feel like it's more predictable, although it's really not, probably. But then you start adding other people in, you're unlocking a whole new potential of your life.
Absolutely.
Now, it might be scary because you don't necessarily know when you have outside forces, you don't necessarily know where it's going to go. But in theory, you don't know where it's going to go anyways. And so you might as well.
Boom. That is the thing. We have such a great illusion of control, and over again, that illusion keeps getting burst. But many of us fight that reality, and it slaps us right back. So why don't you just go with the flow and get the
Exactly.
most out of those waves? Exactly.
And then when the whenever something happens, it could be good. You have someone to celebrate it with. You have all these people to celebrate it with. And if it goes bad, you got a bunch of people who either it went bad with them or you bring you up. And it's there. We're meant to be. Even with technology, I feel like it keeps on separating us a little bit more. But I feel like having all these people and leveraging each other brings us together, and you're in it together.
Absolutely. And over and over again, I don't know why we even bother with this study, but we keep doing this study about what makes people happy. And the number one thing is when people are exerting themselves and looking outside of themselves and including other people into their own space is at the end of the day what makes us happiest. But I do it's counterintuitive. There's something I tell people sometimes, which sometimes scares them, but I tell them that the thing that we identify ourselves most with is ironically the one thing that we really have no access to without someone else's help. Our faces. None of us has seen our own faces. We always see our face through a medium. It's either a mirror, water, something else. It is only another human being that sees our face the way it is. And
Yeah.
that for us is what really identifies us. So even that which we find as our strongest identity requires a third party. But in the same vein, while that might make people feel so vulnerable, but guess what? That person also has that same problem. They can't see their face, but you can. And so in my head, it just means that, we just need each other. We just help each other. We just let each other grow. Because, for instance, you might have a mark on your face and you don't know it's someone else that's like, yeah, there's something there. We need each other. And
Yeah.
we're better off that way.
Steven, thank you so much for joining us today. I thoroughly enjoy the way you look at life, and I just think your way of putting it in a children's book is, I think, something that parents can enjoy. And I'm really excited for your story to actually be on the Daydreaming Kids podcast. We're bringing it to life and super excited about that. So where can people find your book?
Oh, you can find it on Amazon. It's like the question. I was like, yeah, it's on Kindle, Amazon. It's there, and of course you could also. Strangely enough, I'm not on a lot of social media, but you can see me on LinkedIn. If you ever wanted to connect to me, or one of those pieces I occasionally write once a month or so, or stuff like that. But I'm also always happy to just connect with people in different ways, shapes, or forms. And when a few people email me from time to time, and then I respond.
Perfect. That's wonderful. Thank you, Jeff Bezos, for Amazon. We do appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff. Did a good
Thanks,
one.
Jeff. Well, Steven, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
It was a pleasure to talk to you too, Ben.